They said it was just a routine visit, but nothing felt routine when the HOA sent police officers pounding on my door. I hadn't broken any rules, yet the look in their eyes told a different story. It wasn't about the house, the lawn, or the neighborhood. It was about something far deeper, something they refused to say out loud. What happened on my front porch that day exposed more than HOA politics. It revealed the ugly truth they tried to hide. And when my wife stepped outside, everything changed. The question is, why did silence suddenly replace their anger? It started like any other weekend morning. The sun was barely up, and I was standing on the porch, sipping coffee, proud of the home my wife and I had worked so hard to buy. We weren't just neighbors, we were part of this community. We'd paid our dues, kept our lawn tidy, followed every rule the HOA put in place. At least that's what I thought. But the whispers started first. Strange looks from people I'd waved to 100 times before. Letters slid into my mailbox that didn't quite feel official. Complaints about things that weren't even true. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was just a misunderstanding. After all, we had done nothing wrong. Yet something was off. The tone grew colder, the complaints sharper, and it became clear this wasn't about rules at all. It was about us, about me, about my family, and about the color of our skin. Still, I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it couldn't possibly turn into anything serious. What I didn't realize then was that the HOA had already taken its next step, and soon, my front door would become the stage for something I never expected. Something that would expose just how far people are willing to go when prejudice hides behind authority. The first official letter came weeks later, neatly folded, stamped with the HOA's seal. It accused us of non-compliance for something as petty as the color of our shutters. We had chosen them straight from the community's approved list, but that didn't matter. The letters kept coming, each one angrier than the last, each one more personal. Neighbors who once smiled now avoided our eyes. Cars slowed when passing our home, their drivers staring just a little too long, as if searching for a flaw. The message was clear. We weren't welcome. Then came the knock on the door late one evening. 3 HOA board members stood there, arms crossed, voices sharp. They claimed complaints had been overlooked and that further action would be taken if we didn't comply. But as I listened, something in their tone told me this wasn't about shutters, paint, or rules. It was about us. Days later, I noticed unfamiliar vehicles idling near the house. Men with clipboards stood outside, pretending to inspect but never speaking a word. A neighbor whispered that the HOA was planning to make an example out of us. The air grew heavier with each passing day, a storm building that I couldn't stop. And then it happened. The pounding at the door, hard, deliberate, unrelenting. When I opened it, 2 uniformed police officers stood on my porch, hands on their belts, their eyes scanning me as if I were already guilty. They said the HOA had filed a complaint, but their vague words didn't explain why they came with such force. My stomach sank. This wasn't a warning. This was intimidation. As they questioned me, neighbors gathered at a distance, whispering, watching. The HOA members stood proudly behind the officers, arms folded, smirks barely hidden. It wasn't just about enforcing rules anymore. It was about sending a message, one they thought I was too powerless to fight. And just when the tension reached its breaking point, a sound from inside the house changed everything. My wife's footsteps echoed toward the door. They had no idea who was about to walk outside, and neither did they expect the silence that would follow. The officers' questions grew sharper, their tone colder, as if they were searching for a reason, any reason, to justify why they had been sent. One shifted his stance, hand brushing his holster, his gaze locked on me like I was a threat in my own home. The HOA members stood smugly in the background, feeding off the power of the moment, certain they had finally cornered me. My chest tightened. Every second stretched longer, the weight of history pressing down. I thought of all the times people who looked like me never made it past moments like this. My hands felt heavy. My voice caught in my throat. Fear and anger fought inside me, but before I could speak again, the sound of the front door opening cut through the air. She stepped out. My wife, tall, steady, dressed in full uniform. The sunlight caught her badge, glinting like a shield against the lies surrounding us. The officers froze. Their expressions shifted instantly, the authority in their voices replaced with uneasy silence. The same men who had been ready to treat me like a criminal now stood face to face with someone they couldn't dismiss, someone whose uniform demanded the respect they had so quickly denied me. The HOA board members faltered, their smugness cracking, eyes darting between the officers and my wife. The balance of power shifted in a single heartbeat, and in that silence, the truth of their intentions hung heavier than any words could. This wasn't about shutters or lawns. It was about us, about race, authority, and the lengths they would go to remind us we didn't belong. For the first time, it wasn't me on trial. It was them. The silence on that porch spoke louder than any words ever could. The officers who moments earlier stood firm and ready now shifted uncomfortably, their questions dissolving into half-hearted excuses. One cleared his throat, muttered something about miscommunication, and within minutes, they retreated. The HOA members who had marched to my door with so much pride suddenly looked small, their power shattered in front of the very neighbors they hoped to impress. But even in that moment of relief, the weight of what had happened didn't disappear. My wife's uniform may have silenced them, but what about the families without someone to wear that shield? What about the people who face this kind of intimidation every single day, with no witness, no defense, no one to turn the tide? That's the cruel truth of racism. It hides behind policies, behind paperwork, behind authority figures who claim they're just doing their job. It pretends to be about rules when, at its core, it's about exclusion. And while we may have walked away that day with our dignity intact, too many others are left scarred by battles they never chose to fight. Standing on that porch, I realized something. This wasn't just about me or my wife or even our neighborhood. It was about a much larger fight, one that won't end until silence is replaced with accountability and prejudice is met with justice. So, I'll leave you with this. If a uniform was the only thing that stopped their racism that day, what happens to the ones who don't have it? If stories like this moved you, don't just watch, subscribe, and join us in exposing injustice one story at a time.